This session is related to exercise reversible and redox reactions. Reversible reaction means the reaction in which the reactant can form a product and the product can decompose to form back the reactant. Whereas redox reaction in which the substance can be oxidized or reduced, and we already discussed oxidation means oxidation is having three definitions. It can be in terms of electron. Oxidation is a loss of electron, reduction is a gain of electron, and in terms of oxygen, addition of oxygen is called oxidation, and removal of oxygen is called reduction. And the last one is oxidation number. The charge appear on the element when it lose or gain electron. That if there's an increase in oxidation number, we call that as oxidation. If there's a decrease in oxidation number, we call that as reduction. So this whole exercise, the first part of this exercise are multiple choice question, and then about 22 multiple choice questions are there, and after that there are structure questions as well. Okay, in this question, steam react with carbon is an endothermic reaction. Which condition of temperature and pressure would give the largest yield? Largest yield means yield here refers to amount of the product. So you have to recall the idea whenever the reversible reaction is endothermic. So whenever we increase, they're talking about the yield amount of the product. So for endothermic, if we increase the temperature, the equilibrium will shift towards the right hand side. The equilibrium shift towards right. I'm writing in short, shift right here refers to equilibrium shifted towards right. So we can say we'll have more product, or the yield refers to amount of the product, the yield will increase. For endothermic reactions, if we decrease the temperature, then equilibrium shift left, we'll have less product, or the yield or the amount of the product will decrease. So first, when we check which condition of a temperature, we want to increase the yield and the reaction is endothermic. So what we should do, we should increase the temperature. So temperature should be increased or temperature should be high. This is one thing. Then what about the pressure? What is the effect of the pressure? The pressure, whenever we increase the pressure for a reversible reaction, when we increase the pressure, it will shift toward the side where there are less particles of gas. And if we decrease the pressure or lower the pressure, it will shift towards side where more particles of gas. So this is how the pressure is affecting the equilibrium. So as you can see, the number of the particle of the gas, this is solid and this one is gas. So we have one particle of a gas in the reactant side, and this is gas and this is also a gas. So we have two particles. So if I increase the pressure, where the equilibrium will shift towards side where less particles, so it will shift backward in this example. So if it shifts backward, if we increase pressure in this example, it will shift towards the left hand side. If shift towards the left hand side, so what will happen? The yield will decrease because amount of product will decrease. We want to increase the yield. So if we want to increase the yield for this reaction, what we should do? We should lower the pressure. As we lower the pressure, equilibrium will shift towards side where more particles of the gas are there. So it will shift towards the right hand side. So what could be the right answer? The temperature, we should increase the temperature to get greater yield or amount of product, and we should lower the pressure to get the greater amount of product. That's why B is the right answer. Is it clear? Discussion? So just recall the idea how the temperature and pressure shift the equilibrium. For endothermic reaction, increase in temperature shift the equilibrium towards the right hand side, so yield increases, and decrease in temperature shift the equilibrium towards the left hand side, so yield will decrease. And for pressure, it's not fixed like shifting right or left. It depends on the equation. If we increase the pressure, equilibrium shift towards side where less particles, and if we decrease pressure, equilibrium shift towards side where more particles. So in this case, because we want to shift towards right as we want to increase the yield, that's why we should lower the pressure and we should increase the temperature. In question 2, which equation represent reduction? Reduction means gain of electron. Always remember from rig. Rig means that's a gain of electron. So if it is gaining electron, the charge should be correct. Iron is +2, it is gaining electron, that's true. But what should be the charge if iron gain 1 electron? If it was +2, it gained 1. So it should be +1 here. But because they write +3, that's why this is wrong. Even though the equation is for gaining electron, but what happened? The charge is not written correctly. This B cannot be an answer. Why? Because it is a loss of electrons. So that's why it cannot be an answer. What about C? Iron is +3, it gain electron and it turned into iron 2. So the correct answer is C. Why not D? D is also again wrong because it's a loss of electron. Loss of electron is oxidation, not reduction. So we have to identify reduction. A was not right because the A was in terms of electron it is correct, but in terms of charge it was wrong. So that's why the correct answer is C. Another question, nitrogen, hydrogen and ammonia are gases which are placed in a container. The container is then sealed. After some time equilibrium forms. So what is the meaning of equilibrium? Which statement explain equilibrium? Equilibrium means the rate of the reactions are same. So rate of formation of ammonia, like the way ammonia is formed, is equal to rate of decomposition of ammonia. It's same as, like if we say two particles of, so reduction rate of formation of ammonia, the rate at which ammonia is formed is same as rate at which ammonia decompose. You use the term equilibrium for this. So rate of formation of ammonia is equal to rate of decomposition of ammonia. So we define this term as equilibrium. Then question 4, an example of a redox reaction is there. So this is an example of redox reaction. Which statement about the reaction is correct? So first, when we work out, like we have zinc, we have zinc atom, it is reacting with copper +2. As a result, what happened? It formed Zn +2 and copper. So first we'll identify the changes, oxidation and reduction. So when we, for element, their oxidation state is 0. Zinc is, originally it is 0, it become +2. So if 0 become +2, the oxidation number increases. If oxidation number increase, what we call that, if there's an increase in oxidation number, we call this change as oxidation. And for substance for which oxidation happen, we call that as a reducing agent. So oxidation happen for zinc and it is acting like a reducing agent. And what happened? Copper is +2, copper +2 changes to copper 0. So copper +2 change to copper 0, so oxidation number decreases. If oxidation number decrease, what we call this change is known as reduction. And yeah, change is reduction, or we can say reducing agent, or oxidizing agent. So what is a reducing agent here? Zinc is a reducing agent. Zinc is a reducing agent here, and oxidizing agent is what? Copper 2 ion is oxidizing agent. So when we check the options, zinc is oxidized. The first one, zinc is oxidizing agent. That's wrong. Zinc is not. A and B cannot be an answer because zinc is not an oxidizing agent. Zinc is a reducing agent. So either C will be answer or D will be answer. Then what happened to copper? So copper is +2. It becomes 0. If copper +2 becomes 0, it means copper is reduced. So copper 0 become +2. So copper is reduced. That's why D is the right answer. Copper is not oxidized, copper 2 ion. Copper 2 ion is reduced. It is acting like an oxidizing agent, but copper 2 ion is reduced. If you read the statement, is written zinc is reducing agent and it reduces copper 2 ion. Copper 2 ion is reduced because first it was +2, then it becomes 0. So the reduction happened for copper 2 ion, or copper 2 ion is reduced, or it is acting like an oxidizing agent. So the substance which is a reducing agent, what happened? Oxidation happened for that. And the substance which is oxidizing agent, what happened? Reduction happened for that. So zinc, it's a reducing agent, oxidation happened for zinc. And copper 2 ion, it is oxidizing agent and reduction happened for that copper 2 ion. Is it clear? This question? So D is the correct answer for this. Is it clear now? So for a substance which oxidation happen is a reducing agent, and substance which reduction happen is an oxidizing agent. So another question, hydrogen is produced when methane react with water. The reaction is endothermic. Which condition will give the highest yield? Highest yield means will shift the equilibrium towards the right hand side, high or more product. So first the reaction is endothermic. If the reaction is endothermic, if the reversible reaction, the forward reaction is endo, then when we increase the temperature, equilibrium will shift towards the right hand side, or the yield will increase. And if we for endothermic reaction, if we decrease the temperature, equilibrium will shift towards the left hand side, or the yield will decrease. So first, because it's an endothermic reaction, we want to increase the yield. So what should be the temperature? Temperature should be high, or increase in temperature. So either A will be answer or C. Then what is the effect of the pressure? For pressure, we check the number of moles of gas. So if we increase the pressure, So if we increase the pressure, it will shift towards side of less particles of gas. And if we decrease the pressure, it will shift towards side of more particles. So we want, when we check the number of the moles of the gas, here 1 and 1, so total 2 particles. Here 1 and 3, total 4 particles. So we want to shift towards the right hand, towards the side where more particles are there. So what we should do, we should decrease the pressure. So when we decrease the pressure, it will shift towards side where more particles are there. That's why C will be the right answer. So reversible reaction, the equilibrium is shifted towards the side where number of the particles of the gas are fewer or more, sorry. When we decrease the pressure, so pressure should be decreased to favor the forward reaction or shift the equilibrium towards the right, and the temperature should increase. So that's why question 5, C is the right answer. In question 6, the following reversible reaction take place in a closed vessel at a constant temperature. When a system reaches equilibrium, more T is added. After addition of T, which substance increase in concentration? When we add T, when we add the product, equilibrium will shift towards the left hand side. So if equilibrium is shifted towards the left hand side, because we are adding a product, so that shift the equilibrium towards left or backward. So what happened to amount of P? That will increase, amount of Q will increase, and amount of R will also increase. So P, Q and R, their amounts will change or their amounts will increase. That's why C is the right answer. So whenever a product is added to a reaction mixture, in a reversible reaction, the equilibrium will shift towards the left hand side or the amount of the reactants, because you have now you added a product, so product will further decompose and give you more reactant. That's why the amount of the reactant will also increase. Okay, remember the effect. If you remember the first step, effect of concentration, always remember, if we add reactant or we remove product, the equilibrium will shift towards the right hand side. So if we add reactant or we remove product, equilibrium will shift towards the right hand side and we'll get more product. Or the yield increases. And if we add product or we remove reactant, the equilibrium will shift towards the left hand side and you will have more product form, more reactant form, and the yield or the amount of the reactant will decrease, amount of product will decrease. So when a system has reached equilibrium, more T is added. What is the meaning of more T is added? It means more product is added. This is what we are doing, because T is a product, so we are adding more T. So if we add more T, T will react with S, and when T will react with S, it will form more P, Q and R, or greater amount of P, Q and R will be formed. So amount of P, Q and R will increase. So adding a product, basically this is what we are doing. We are adding a product. So equilibrium will shift towards the left hand side. There will be more reactant formed and the yield will decrease. Yield means amount of product. Is it clear? Then in this question, first four ionic half equations are given. When we check copper 2 ion gain electron, when positive ion gain electron, it turned into copper atom. What we call this change? Reduction or oxidation? Copper ion gain electron, the first change. In terms of electron, is it reduction or oxidation? So it is reduction. Because if copper ion gain electron, something gain electron, we call reduction. So when we check statement A, in equation 1, copper 2 ion is oxidized. That's wrong. It is not oxidized. It is reduced. That's why 1 is not correct. What about 2? Iodide ion, like I will write the equation here. Maybe that might not be understandable here. Iodide ion turned into iodine molecule by loss of electron. So if it lose electron, what we call this change, loss of electron, it's called oxidation. So when we check in equation 2, iodide ion are reduced to iodine. So that is also wrong. They are not reduced, they are oxidized because they are losing electron. A negative ion is having extra electron and it is losing that extra electron. Then the third one, iron 2 ion turned into iron 3 ion by loss of electron, losing electron. So whenever something lose electron, what we call that change as oxidation. So iron is plus 2, it loses another electron, it turned into plus 3. So in equation 3, the iron 2 ions are oxidized to iron 3 ion. That's why C will be the right answer. And why not the fourth one? Because if chlorine molecule gain electron, if chlorine molecule is there, that gain electron turned into chloride ion. So reduction is a gain of electron, so this changes reduction. So in equation 4, chlorine is oxidized. No, it's not oxidized, it is actually reduced. That's why C is the right answer, that iron 2 ions are oxidized to iron 3. Like iron 2 ion loses electron and they turn into iron 3. Is it clear? Question 7 is clear? In question 8, when you have energy change negative, it means exothermic reaction. And for exothermic reactions, whenever the reversible reaction is exothermic, always remember that if you increase the temperature, equilibrium will shift towards, for exothermic reaction, when you increase the temperature, equilibrium will shift towards the left hand side, or the yield or the amount of the product will decrease. And if a reaction is exothermic and you decrease temperature, equilibrium will shift towards the right hand side, or the yield or the amount of the product will increase. So, and what about the pressure? For a pressure, it's not fixed, it depends on the equation. The pressure, if we increase the pressure, it will shift towards the side where less particles are there. And if we decrease pressure, it will shift towards the side where more particles are there. So what will happen? We have hydrogen and iodine form hydrogen iodide. So two molecules of hydrogen iodide and two more. So the amount of the gaseous reactant and product is same. So whenever you have same number of moles or same number of the particles of reactant and product in the gaseous state, so for this reaction there will be no effect of the pressure. The pressure is not able to affect this reaction. So only thing which affect is the temperature. So it's an exothermic reaction which change in the condition would increase the percentage of hydrogen iodide. Hydrogen iodide means product. So sometimes they, instead of they use the term yield, they say, or a product, they say that specific chemical name. So hydrogen iodide is a product. We want to increase the amount of product for exothermic reaction. So whenever we want to increase the amount of product for exothermic reaction, we should decrease the temperature. So pressure won't affect. So A cannot be an answer or C cannot be an answer. We are left with B and D. So why we select B? Because the reaction is exothermic and exothermic reactions prefer low temperature for a higher yield or greater amount of product. Is it clear? Question 8. So basically you have to learn the factors which affect the reversible reaction. Once you memorize those factors, you don't have to bother about too much. The question pattern is same. Just remember, if reaction is endothermic, what will be the effect if we increase the temperature or decrease the temperature. Chromium forms a compound chromium 3 sulfate. What does 3 represent? Like what is the Roman number 3 is representing? It represents the oxidation number of chromium or valency of a chromium or oxidation number or the charge. These are the things. That's a Roman number we use for these specific elements as they have variable oxidation number. Another chlorine can be manufactured by the following reaction. The reaction is exothermic. So if the reaction is exothermic, which change will increase the yield? If the reaction is exothermic, as we discussed for exothermic reactions, if we increase the temperature, the yield will decrease. So option D cannot be an answer. There is no other thing related to temperature. And if we decrease the temperature, the yield will increase. So D cannot be. Then pressure, decrease the pressure. Pressure always, whenever we are talking about the pressure, if we increase the pressure, it will shift towards side where less particles. And if we decrease the pressure, it will shift towards side where more particles. So if we decrease the pressure, it should shift towards side where more particles of a gas. So when we check the particle of a gas, here 5 and here 4. So where it will shift backward. So if it shift backward, the yield will not increase, the yield will decrease. Then when you check adding water, H2O. So if I add more water, when we add more water, these water particles will combine with chlorine, and as a result, what they form? They will form more reactant. So equilibrium is shifted towards left hand side. So whenever we add reactant, like here, adding more HCl. So when we add more HCl, HCl will combine with oxygen, and as a result, they will give more product. So that's why A is the right answer. So remember, for a reversible reactions, if we increase the amount of the reactant, the equilibrium will shift towards right hand side. And if we decrease the amount of the reactant, the equilibrium will shift towards the left hand side. Is it clear? That's question 10. Question 11 is about chlorate ions. That we will discuss later because still we did not discuss that part. So copper 2 ion, copper 2 oxide react with hydrogen. oxygen is involved. So when oxygen is involved, you can work out in terms of oxygen. So copper oxide is there, it turned into copper. So it lost oxygen, or oxygen is removed. What we call removal of oxygen. So when there's a removal of oxygen, what we call that as reduction. So it means for copper oxide, reduction happen and it is acting like an oxidizing agent. For hydrogen, it turned into water. So what we call that addition of oxygen. And if it's an addition of oxygen, what we call that as oxidation. And if oxidation happen, so for hydrogen, what happened? Oxidation happened for hydrogen. If oxidation happen, it is acting like a reducing agent. So which substance is the oxidizing agent here? Copper oxide is oxidizing agent. And which substance reducing agent? Hydrogen is a reducing agent. So B is the right answer. Is it clear? Discussion? So for substance which oxidation happen is a reducing agent, and substance which reduction happen is an oxidizing agent. In question 13, methane react with steam to produce hydrogen and carbon monoxide. The equation for this reaction is shown. The reaction is reversible. The forward reaction is endothermic. So reaction with change in temperature and pressure will increase the yield. So whenever you have endothermic reactions, what we should do, if we increase the temperature, equilibrium will shift towards the right hand side. If we decrease the temperature, equilibrium will shift towards the left hand side. So what we should do, we should increase the temperature to get the greater yield. But what about the pressure? The pressure, what is the effect of pressure? If we increase the pressure, equilibrium will shift towards side where less moles are there, less particles. And if we decrease pressure, equilibrium will shift towards side where more particles are there. So when we check the number of the particle, there are 2 particles of the reactant and there are 4 particles. We want to shift the equilibrium towards the right hand side. So what we should do, we should decrease the pressure. So when we decrease the pressure, equilibrium will shift towards the right hand side. So decrease the pressure and increase the temperature to get the greater yield. So temperature should be increased and the pressure should be decreased. That's why for question 13, C is the right answer. Is it clear, this question? How the pressure and the temperature are affecting. So always for endothermic, you have to remember the thing that the temperature, increase in temperature give you more product, and decrease in temperature will give you less product. In the question, copper metal donate electron to silver ion. So this is related to the reactivity. Reducing agent means itself it is oxidized. Oxidation happen, and oxidation happen means lose electron. So always remember, the more reactive metal will lose electron easily, or more reactive metal will lose electron faster. So when we check the reactivity, that is potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminum, zinc, iron, lead, copper, mercury, silver, gold, platinum. So the one which is more reactive can lose electron easily. The one which is less reactive cannot lose. They can lose, but not easily. So the question is, which is the strongest reducing agent, means which one can lose electron easily. So what we have, which is a more reactive, in this example, zinc, because copper is here, silver and zinc. So these are the three elements involved. So which is a more reactive? Zinc is the more reactive. So zinc metal will lose electron easily and it turned into zinc ion. So we can also say that zinc is the strongest reducing agent because it can lose its electron easily. And question 15, the formation of sulfur trioxide from sulfur dioxide is a reversible. The reaction is exo. So whenever you have exothermic reaction, when you increase the temperature, the yield will decrease because the equilibrium will shift towards the left. And if you decrease the temperature, the yield will increase or equilibrium shift towards the right hand side. So which change would increase the equilibrium yield of sulfur trioxide? So what we should do? We should decrease the temperature, that's true. What about pressure? About the pressure, when we increase the pressure, equilibrium will shift towards the side where less particles. And if we decrease pressure, equilibrium will shift towards the side where more particles. So we want more sulfur trioxide. Here we have 3 moles and 2 moles. So what we should do, we should increase the pressure. So when we increase the pressure, the equilibrium will shift towards the side where there are less moles. So we'll get more sulfur trioxide. And decrease the concentration of oxygen. If we reduce the amount of oxygen, what will happen? Removing a reactant shift the equilibrium backward, because if you reduce this amount, it will shift backward, so it won't give you more sulfur trioxide, it will reduce the amount of sulfur trioxide. So increasing the pressure and lowering the temperature will increase the yield of this reaction. Is it clear? Discussion 15. So these are some questions related to topic reversible reaction. The next session will discuss more questions related to the topic. Any question related to the class today?